Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Now, around 2018, Taylor Coronado would be very heavily into not only drinking and smoking cannabis, but also smoking what she likes to call the bitch or crystal meth. And this, unfortunately, would be around the time when she would hit the second tragedy that would happen in her life, as her father, Arturo Coronado, would actually catch a charge. Because while Taylor was living in Texas with her grandparents, it's around this time that one of the family members that resided with Arturo would be his then wife, would be informed by one of her younger children. Now, I'm not sure if she was exactly 13 when she told her mother this, or if it was her daughter. I've heard some reports being that it was a family member, and I've heard some reports being that it was her daughter. Or I've also heard that she was 13 when she told her mom, or she had gotten older and told her that around the time that she was 13, but I digress. She would claim that when she was 13, or around the time that when she was 13, Arturo Coronado would sexually assault her and rape her. But unfortunately, they would not charge Arturo for this crime till about 3 years later, as he would keep pressing the trial date further and further down the road. And then, unfortunately, in 2020, the entire nation would be struck by the coronavirus pandemic. So when this pandemic would hit, it would actually push his trial date even further. Now, the next part of this series is entirely speculation, so take it with a grain of salt. It has been heavily theorized that Arturo Coronado had also sexually assaulted or raped not only this child that was at the time his stepchild, but also had sexually assaulted Taylor Coronado. As around the time that these charges was being made, Taylor would confide to a family member that her father had in fact raped her when she was a little girl. But she had thought about pressing charges against her father, but she had two choices, unfortunately. One of being, do I want to pay for a lawyer to press my father for these charges, or do I just want to just live? And would unfortunately say that hiring a lawyer would be too expensive, so she just would not press charges. The other person that probably could relay some information about that would be Junior, and unfortunately, he would not be able to say anything, as you will soon find out. But after hearing from, at the time, Arturo's wife, that one of her child had been raped by her husband, she would then not only press charges, but she would also divorce him. And it is around this time that they would keep on doing this whole trial thing for the raping of a 13-year-old girl. It's also said that while Arturo was trying to press and stretch out the trial date, he would also take a plea deal to where he would only take a battery charge of second-degree sexual assault. And around this time in 2018, Taylor Coronado was, as I said before, becoming very heavily involved with smoking crystal meth. And it's around this time that she began working at a factory where she would meet a gentleman. And that gentleman would be Warren Schabu. Not only did Warren work at a factory, he was also a drug dealer where he would also sell crystal meth. It also should be noted that he had a criminal history as well, where at some point he had catched a charge for breaking and entering. It's also said that Warren and Taylor did not have a very good relationship, as because he was a drug dealer for crystal meth, they had a lot of meth-induced arguments, where all too many times either Taylor or Warren would be accusing each other of cheating on each other or just being very combative. It's said at some point that while they were living in Texas, that Taylor would actually run over to a neighbor's house and would scream for help to where police were called. So a lot of times during this time, it's around there that a lot of cops were involved during the relationship between Warren and Taylor. But this would not stop them from seeing each other, and they would also at some point get tattoos on their necks with each other's names. Warren would get Taylor's name on his neck, and Taylor would get his name on her neck. And around sometime in 2019, Taylor and Warren would decide to get married. And in this Snapchat post, she would make a story where she would talk about changing her last name. But what would be really different is she would not change her last name to Chabot. And it said that Warren and Taylor would come up with the idea to change both of their last names to Schabusiness, as Warren on the street was known as Schabusiness, which was the first three letters of his last name with business at the end of it. And Taylor thought this was a really neat idea, so she would change her last name to Taylor Schabusiness. And around the time of the coronavirus pandemic is also around the time that Warren and Taylor Schabusiness would actually move from Texas over to Taylor's original stomping grounds to Green Bay, Wisconsin. And this unfortunately would be where Taylor would start getting more and more into trouble. As on July of 2020, Taylor could be seen walking around the neighborhood, knocking on doors, and just causing somewhat of a commotion and making a lot of the neighbors uncomfortable. So it's around that time that police were quickly called. A police officer would arrive to see a very disoriented Taylor Schabusiness knocking over trash cans and knocking on the doors. And when the police officer would walk up, she would turn around and say, "I don't have to stop for you." It's around this time that the police would walk over to Taylor to try to see what was going on. And it's around this time that Taylor would try to tell the police officer that she was on a different planet, and would do this by showing her track marks from shooting up crystal meth by raising up her shirt sleeve. After she would do this, another police officer would come over to try to de-escalate the situation, to where she would begin screaming at both police officers and even attempting to walk out into traffic. When the police would try to drag her back from the traffic to get out of her harm's way, she would look at the police officers and say, "Did you shit?" And this would lead up to another altercation where she would begin resisting arrest and begin kicking the police officers. They would arrest Taylor and give her 3 years probation and give her a charge with resisting arrest. And it wouldn't be till a month later that she would violate her parole. And instead of pulling over for the police, Taylor would decide to try to evade the police, and she would begin flooring it, driving away from the police, where quickly a police chase would ensue. Multiple police cars would try to chase her down. She at some point would be driving very sporadically, and at some points not only just almost hitting cars, but even almost running over certain people. It's said that Taylor would actually drive through Green Bay and would actually attempt to drive over to her father's apartment complex as a way to run away from the police. But the police would quickly get in touch with Taylor and drag her out of the apartment, and it is there that they would arrest her again. And if you're thinking that this is where they put her in jail, you would be mistaken, as they did not give her much of a charge, as the only thing they would do from this occurrence is they would give her 3 months in jail, and they would add on 2 more years onto her probation charge. They would also give her a mandatory diagnosis for a psych evaluation, where they would find out that now Taylor also had PTSD and also bipolar disorder, on top of her other mental illnesses. And it's also around this time that Taylor would find out something else that was very important. Because it's around this time that while Taylor had been using meth on a regular basis and having all the problems with the police, it's there that she would find out that she and Warren Schabusiness were in fact pregnant and expecting a child.